ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवती नैष्टिकी। ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामीनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभो नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे। हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. Hare Krishna. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. By His divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. We are reading from Canto 4, Chapter 20, Lord Vishnu's appearance in the sacrificial arena. So, very sorry, last 2 days I was in Vada and there is very big connectivity issue. So, we could not connect there. Mudal Krishna Prabhu, where are we right now?
Prabhuji,
15
we are on
text.
text 15.
Okay, we'll just revise few things in this text. Go till 15. So we are in the section where text 1 to 16, this chapter is divided into 4 sections. This is the first section, text 1 to 16. Lord Vishnu instructs Maharaj Prithu. So we have seen that till now we have seen Lord, the Lord is instructing that please forgive Indra. Knowledgeable and the detached persons are not malicious towards others when others are especially attached to their own sense gratification or fruitive activities. Now, text 7 and 8, knowledge of the soul and supersoul makes one unaffected by the moods. So, this is the section. So, text 7. Yeah, translation.
The individual soul is one, pure, non-material, and self-effulgent. He is the reservoir of all good qualities, and he is all-pervading. He is without material covering, and he is the witness of all activities. He is completely distinguished from other living entities, and he is transcendental to all embodied souls. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. So, this is the knowledge about the supersoul. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, according to Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the Lord is describing about himself in this verse or the feature of Paramatma. Later down, Prabhupada writes, down the, later in the purport, due to being covered by the material body, living entities are not self-effulgent. So it is not that there is no Atma Jyoti, Swayam Prakash is not there for the living entity. Being part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, even the living entity is self-effulgent because the living entity is spiritual in nature. But due to covered with the material body, what happens? Living entity's effulgence is covered over. But that is not the case with the Supreme Lord, who is self-effulgent. And that's why you will see that advanced devotees, at times you will see a kind of aura or the effulgence. This is because more one gets detached from the identification with the body and works on the platform of the soul, more he will be, more he will revive his spiritual effulgence. Of course, that spiritual effulgence cannot be perceived by the material eyes. That is also another thing. But the point is that you will often see devotees, very bright devotees, right? Very bright faced devotees. The living entity being contaminated by the modes of material nature is called as saguna. This we have seen. And And whereas the Lord is called as Nirguna, that is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right. So, one second. Incidentally, yesterday Radhesham Prabhu was giving a Bhagavatam class in at Vada, and there he was quoting something so amazing. Sometimes all these coincidences are so beautiful. There he was describing this verse, Ek Shuddha Swayam Jyoti, that the Supreme Lord is Swayam Jyoti, and then he is called as Sarva Sakshi. That this is the Brahman feature of the Lord, then there is Paramatma feature of the Lord, and then finally there is Bhagavan feature of the Lord. So somewhere around this verse, I was just wondering whether it was this verse. Somewhere similar to this verse, Radhesham Prabhu was quoting yesterday. That generally we have these three features of the Absolute. Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavan iti Shabdate. Similarly, a very beautiful parallel verse is there. Eka Jyotir, here it is, Sarvano Brita Sakshihi. And there is another verse from Bhagavatam. Yes, text. So this is about text 7, is describing knowledge of the Super Soul. Text 8, translation.
Although within the material nature, one who is thus situated in full knowledge of the Paramatma and Atma is never affected by the modes of material nature, for he is always situated in my transcendental loving service. Hare Krishna.
So now the Lord says, my dear Prithu, that anybody who has the detailed knowledge of Atma and Paramatma is never affected by the moods of material nature. For he is always situated in my transcendental loving service. Right. So again, what this means is, day before yesterday, there was a question around this. What this means is, never affected by the modes of material nature doesn't mean that he has become a stone-like personality. Answer is that his devotional service, his contribution on the civil plane, contribution to the society, on the spiritual plane, service contribution to the Supreme Lord is never affected by these interactions of three modes of material nature. So it is not that he is not feeling the emotions. Emotions are not working on him, and it is not affecting his spiritual or material duties. Right? Please make this point. That it is not that he is not feeling emotions. Right? But emotions are not disturbing his material or spiritual duty. This is very, very important. This is the very deep paradigm of Bhagavad Gita. But emotions are not disturbing his her material or spiritual duties. Right? And Prabhupada describes such a personality is literally called as Jivan Mukta Sa Uchyate. And this is possible by performance of devotional service. So after hearing the three modes of material nature, Arjuna is asking that, my dear Lord, what is the way to cross over these three modes? Daivi Esha Gunamai Mama Maya Duratteya. And the Lord says, Mam Chayo Abhyabhicharena Bhakti Yogena Sevate. Sagunan Samatitaitan. He transcends the three modes of material nature, Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate, and attains the supremely blissful nature of me. Yeah, text 9, translation.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, continued, my dear King Prithu, when one situated in his occupational duty engages in my loving service without motive for material gain, he gradually becomes very satisfied within.
Yeah, so this we have seen. Very beautiful verse this is. यः स्वधर्मेण मां नित्यं निराशी श्रद्धयान्वितः भजते शनकैस्तस्य मनोराजन् प्रसीदति. When one is situated in his occupational duty, this is very important. We are part of the Varnashrama duty and engages in my devotional service without motive for material gain, then gradually he becomes very satisfied within. Right. So if we do not feel satisfaction within, we have to check these two things. The first thing we have to check is my devotional service a quality devotional service? Sometimes we somehow, I'm talking about myself more. Sometimes, we may end up somehow chanting our round, somehow reading. Just we are engaged in so many activities, we just mess up things. Everything is messed up like that, many times. Or at least sometimes it happens. Everything is messed up. What to do? Little bit slow down and focus on the basics. Back to basics. Right. Slow down and focus. So this is one reason. If we are not doing our spiritual duties very well, chanting while driving. I'm talking about myself. I am not. There is no intention of finding fault with any of the Vaishnava. But life only is so hectic. Life only is so demanding at times. I don't know how to just complete some round somewhere. We just sneak through some time and try to complete it. But I may get good amount of time to find out what is happening in Iran-Israel war and what is happening in when is the Durandar 2 is going to be released. That teaser I have time to watch. So this indicates misplaced priorities, right? So when our devotional service is not up to the mark, there will not be satisfaction within. Second reason is when our contribution to society is not up to the mark, then also there will be dissatisfaction. And of course, we'll not go into the realm of dissatisfaction. Many times we are under engaged. I know few personalities phenomenally capable, but somehow doing very under engaged kind of activity. So this also could lead to the na prasidati, that there will not be full satisfaction. So these are very important verses. This is how Bhagavad Gita is beautifully connected to Srimad Bhagavatam. Very nice verse. This is 4.20.9. Amazing verse. And the previous one, there is one more verse, 4.20.4. Amazing verse. Very amazing verses these two are. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains, if one once works according to the Varnashrama Dharma system and does not desire for the fruitive results, he gets the satisfaction gradually. Right. And the testimony of this is life of Srila Prabhupada himself. Srila Prabhupada's life was such a struggle. I mean, if we read Lilamrit, Srila Prabhupada Lilamrit, he was working very hard to establish business. One after another, businesses were collapsing. 6 places Prabhupada went from one place to another. And raising the business, not 6 jobs he changed. Okay, changing job becomes easy. 6, right from scratch, he has to establish business. And then he was working so hard. He was absolutely loving his family, but family was absolutely uninterested in anything spiritual or even material to a great extent. Right. So, but Prabhupada was very, very committed. So this is how Prabhupada followed his Grihastha ashram. And then Srila Prabhupada describes everyone is situated in occupational duty, but the purpose of material operations, the purpose should not be the material gain, but should be engagement of one's propensities. And one has to be, the skillful enough, wise enough that it leads to material gains as well. So both maintenance is also taken care and contribution is also taken care. Engagement is also taken. We have to engage our propensities and, the Kali Yuga, everything is topsy-turvy. Things have just become up and down. And therefore, the material gains are required, but we should not be working for material gains. Again, the classical Bhagavad Gita paradigm. And then Prabhupada describes about, in this way, a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra can worship the deity with the results of honest labor. Okay, nobody is barred from worshipping the deity. Everybody is welcome to worship the deities. And here there is a description. One should adopt the devotional means of hearing chanting the Sharad. When the Lord is pleased with one's service, one's mission in the life is fulfilled. So this is how Srila Prabhupada concludes this beautiful purport. Srila Prabhupada lived his life by this verse. Many times, we may quote Srila Prabhupada's purport without context, but we have to see the life of Srila Prabhupada as a Grihastha. How did he live his life? Text 10, translation.
When the heart is cleansed of all material contamination, the devotee's mind becomes broader and transparent, and he can see things equally. At that stage of life, there is peace, and one is situated equally with me as Satchidananda Vigraha.
Yeah. So this is very similar to Vidyate Hridaya Granthis Chindyate Sarva Samshaya. So text 9 and 10, Lord is describing, he serves me by occupational duties and attains the peace and perfect vision. So serving the Lord by one's occupational duties. What a beautiful concept this is from Bhagavad Gita. Serving the Lord by one's occupational duties. Now, next two verses 11 and 12, we see how understanding the soul's real position makes one eligible for liberation. Text 11, please. Translation.
Anyone who knows that this material body made of the five gross elements, the sense organs, the working senses, and the mind, is simply supervised by the fixed soul, is eligible to be liberated from material bondage.
Yeah. So, Prabhupada writes here, this verse describes how one can become liberated from material bondage. So, how to become liberated from material bondage? Everybody is looking for liberation. The first point is that one must know that the soul is different from the body. You want to be liberated, but what are you? Who are you? So you are not the body, you are the soul. And the soul here is called as Dehi, one who is possessor of the body. Body is called as Deha, soul is called as Dehi, and he is possessor of the body. And simply by realizing that we are not the body, we are the spirit soul. And this material body, which is made up of the Bhumi Rapo Vayu, Kham, sense organs, the working senses, mind, is simply supervised by the fixed soul. Right? Simply supervised by the fixed soul. Down somewhere, Prabhupada writes, one should therefore not be disturbed by the actions and reactions of these eight gross and the material elements. Right? So things are going to happen. Things are going to happen harder or different than what we anticipated. And one should not be bewildered with all through this roller coaster ride. Right? Again, it is a longer dream that Srila Prabhupada explains. Prabhupada writes here, the material body is called as Deha. The body is changed. This is something, very amazing. The body is changing every moment, but the soul is fixed, and therefore the soul is called as Kutastha. Okay, so now in one of the purports, Srila Prabhupada describes this point. Prabhupada says, just like, when we see a cinema, what is the cinema? Cinema is essentially, the frames going at a speed. They are the static frames going at a speed, something like some 10. Anybody knows exactly? 10, 20 frames they move in per second.
16, Prabhu.
How many? 16.
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah. 16. Oh, nice. 16 rounds also. So they are like 16 frames. They are moved per second. Right. So these are static frames. And because the 16 frames are moved per second, the static frame looks like come to life and some action is taking place. Is there action? No, sir. It's only the color. It's only the color beams which are statically being moved. Statically being moved, yes. And then it looks like there is action. Similarly, now this is something very amazing. We can only intellectually appreciate it, we cannot realize it. Similarly, it is said the body is changing every moment. Now, when we say body is changing every moment, we justify saying that, oh, so many thousands of cells are dying within the body, new cells are getting generated every moment, and this is how body is changing every moment. Bhagavatam goes one step further. Bhagavatam says the body is changing literally every moment, just like we have the 16 frames played through 1 second in the cinema hall. And the soul in the illusion thinks he is in the body, and therefore there is a sense of continuity within the life. But the body is always dead, and body is moving. So Prabhupada writes here, the body is changing every moment, but the soul is fixed, and therefore is called as Kutastha. And this is how the three modes of material nature are acting on the body. And what has happened to the soul? The soul is simply bewildered, illusioned by Maya, thinking, the ahankara, having some false identity. And of course, by the way, till we are in the conditioned stage, we have to take that false identity also very seriously. I mean, this is not to invoke any irresponsibility. That is not never the idea of Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam. But still, the point here is, now look at this point. Body is changing every moment. It is just like those 16 frames moving. So every second, you can just imagine 16 bodies are changed by the soul. Now, don't take the number 16 very seriously. I mean, multiple bodies are changed by the soul. And the soul thinks, oh, there is a continuity. Right? So, this is how, this is how the grand illusion of the soul is. But again, because the soul is entrapped within the body has particular varna and ashrama, the mind based on one's psychophysical nature, and therefore one has to take one's duties very seriously. Right. So this is how Srila Prabhupada writes. Later, in the later part of the purport, when a man is absorbed in a particular thought, he does not hear or see external activities, even though they are enacted in his presence. Similarly, those who are fully absorbed in devotional service do not care what is going on in the external body. That status is called as samadhi. So, what is samadhi? Samadhi is the full absorption, in devotional service. And this we have seen by Prahlad Maharaj. Naivodvijay, Paraduratyaya, Vaitaranyas, Tadviryagayan, Mahamritam Magna Chitta. He says that I am so deeply absorbed in Krishna, Magna Chitta, in the pastimes of the Lord, hearing and chanting, and whatever is happening to the body, somebody is torturing, there are demons, Hiranyakashipu is trying in so many different ways, but Prahlad was very deeply absorbed in devotional service. So this is the extreme example, but one can have, devotional examples also, which we can relate. To the degree we are absorbed in spiritual thoughts, again, nowhere at this point there is, there is a propagation or propaganda for irresponsibility. That is the basic Bhagavad Gita paradigm. In spite of being responsible, in spite of being committed, in spite of being hardworking, these are to given. I mean, these are to given for a devotee. In spite of all this, when things go wrong in one's life, when things are roller coaster, when things are not according to one's desire, then this absorption in devotional service will come very handy to cross beyond these material tribulations. So this is how, Srila Prabhupada very beautifully concluding what is samadhi is. Text 12.
11 from 12.
My dear king, the constant change of this material world is due to the interaction of the three modes of material nature. The five elements, the senses, the demigods who control the senses, as well as the mind, which is agitated by the spirit soul. All these taken together comprise the body. Since the spirit soul is completely different from this combination of gross and subtle material elements, my devotee, who is connected with me in intense friendship and affection, being completely in knowledge, is never agitated by material happiness and distress. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. So now here the Lord says that the devotee very well understands the distinction between material elements, material interactions, how the soul is observer of the whole thing, and thus is not agitated by material happiness and material distress. Again, the word agitated here is is not affected in his service. This is, more precisely at our stage, affected in his service. Material service, spiritual service, both. Material, spiritual. So this is very important. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada describes, the question may be raised if a living entity has to act as the superintendent of the activities of the bodily combination, then how can he be indifferent to the activities of the body? When Prabhupada says example can be given, the crude example here is a businessman is riding in a motor car, sits in the car, supervises its running, advises the driver. He knows how much petrol is being used up. He knows everything about the car, but still he is apart from the car and more concentrated on his business. Right. Very, very beautiful example Prabhupada gives. That now the question may be raised. What is the question? The question is that if the living entity has to act as if he is the superintendent of the activities of the material combination, then how can be he non-different? Right. Prabhupada says, see, running the car and running the business are two different things. One is traveling to a destination to acquire more business. The businessman is aware about the car. Businessman is aware about the petrol. He is instructing the driver. He is sitting in the car, but is focused on the business. Right? He is not enamored by the car, but he is focused on the business. So Prabhupada writes further. Even while riding in the car, he thinks about the business and his office. He has no connection with car, although he is sitting there. As a businessman, he is always absorbed in the thoughts of his business. So the living entity can be absorbed in the thoughts of rendering loving service to the Lord, which is the real business in the human form of life. What an amazing example, right? So of course, one has to run through one's life, one has to run one's life, one has to run one's family, one has to run one's business. But the real business of the living entity, what is the real business of the living entity? The real business is performing devotional service. Nate vidu swartha gatim hi Vishnu. That the real swartha is gatim hi Vishnu, worshipping the Supreme Lord. So one has to conduct all one's activities, but not that all these activities, it's not that the entire energy of the businessman is sapped by running of the car and he has no time for running the business. No, sir. Running the car is incidental. Running the business is the most important part. And businessman is focused on running the business than simply running the car, which is a means of driving the business. Similarly, a living entity, especially when he receives the human form of life. This is very important, right? We have seen that other forms of life, ahar, nidra, bhaya, ityadi, is common is common within the human life and the animal life. Samanyam etat pashubhir narana, dharmo hi tesham, adhiko vishesho. Especially when one has received the human form of life, then one has to do it very well. My grandmother used to sing this song, from Marathi Haripat it is there. Utha utha ho sakalika, sadha apule hita, गेला हा नरदेह तुम्हास कैसा भगवंत. Right, beautifully. Utha utha ho sakalika. Gela ha naradeha. Especially in the naradeha, it is mandatory to focus. That is the real business of naradeha. Right. Naradeha madhyam sulabham sudurlabham. There are so many verses around this. So we will conclude here and continue tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hari Bol.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.